I was in New Zealand. I'd been contracted to go there to fight the New Zealand national super featherweight champion. His name was Tangaroa Harangi, and apparently he'd never been beaten. I remember when I accepted the fight, I was back home in the safety of my hometown, Sydney, Australia. "Yeah, I'll fight Tangi Harangi," I remember confidently boasting. "He doesn't sound too mean to me." You see, I'd already fought the Australian champion, the Australasian champion and the Commonwealth champion well above my own weight. But now that I was in New Zealand, this was a whole different story. There were pictures of this guy plastered on every shop front, on every bus shelter, and on every school kid's shoulder bag. He looked mean. I didn't say anything to Billy, my trainer, but I knew he was thinking the same thing. You see, back then I was young and handsome. I had a full head of hair. I had a couple of diamond earrings, just one tattoo on each arm, and I had a trim, fit, slender physique. I didn't really look like a boxer. I looked more like a gigolo. A swimmer. Anyways, I was here to fight, and that's what I'd be doing. It was noon on fight day, and we just arrived at the weigh-in. There were TV camera crews and reporters from the newspapers, radio interviewers, all there to cover the event. I pushed through the Harangi crowd, who were chanting some kind of a native folk song. A single camera flashed, some people yelled. I was hit on the head by some flailing hands. Once inside, I looked around but couldn't see Tangaroa Harangi anywhere. I was nervous, my heart was racing. I looked at Billy and he was wiping sweat off his forehead, even though it was the middle of winter. A few minutes later, the crowd outside started to cheer and scream. Horns and whistles blared. The chant became louder. Obviously, their hero had arrived. Hundreds of camera flashes exploded. The chanting became louder. People were screaming. It felt like I was at a Beatles concert. And right now, that's exactly where I wished I could have been. The doors opened and in walked Tangaroa Harangi. His Maori body was totally covered in tattoos, tribal tattoos. And he had silver rings dangling from dozens of body piercings, including his eyebrow, nose and nipples. He looked mean. I turned to Billy. I said, "Listen, this guy's twice as big as me. He'll kill me." When I looked back, I actually noticed something I didn't see the first time. He was also bald. This was one scary looking dude. And ugly. But I wasn't prepared to tell him that. I stripped down to my jocks when the referee called me over to the scales. I jumped on. I came in right on the weight. The referee called Harangi up next. Now I was betting that he would come in at least a stone heavier than me. Unbelievably though, he came in right on the weight too. 9 stone 4 pounds. He lifted his arms like this, and I wasn't sure if it was to impress the 40 or so people in the room or to scare me some more. He did both. Anyways, the promoter, who looked nothing like Don King, called us over and said we should do some promotional shots. He said we should shape up and give the people what they wanted. Now I'm 5'6½", every inch a winner. But when we shaped up, this guy stood a good 8 inches taller than me. This guy was huge. Anyway, he folds his arms, he leans his head forward, and he gives me the Maori stare. Looks something like this. I stand on my tippy toes, look up into his ugly mug, and do the only thing I can think of that would put him off. I kiss him smack on the lips. People yelled and screamed, cameras flashed. Tangi stepped back, wiped his mouth with his arm, clenched his fist and lunged forward with my head as his target. I was lucky. I bobbed under, he went over the top of me, landed on a chair, straight onto the floor. I turned and said, "And there's plenty more where that come from," before I picked up my clothes and headed on out. Billy not far behind. It wasn't actually till I got outside that I realised I was only in my jocks. And of course, the TV circus was still there. So what do? I shaped up, let them take some photos. back at the hotel, Billy said to me, "Why did you do what you did back at the weigh-in?" And all I could think of was, what did I have to lose? When I look back on that fight, I realised that that sentence was the turning point. You see, when I realised that the worst thing that could happen was I would lose the fight, I realised that wasn't such a bad thing at all. I'd lost fights before. When I was able to let go of my fear, I became a totally different person, a totally different fighter. And I was able to do what I do best, box. Anyways, this was probably the hardest fight of my career. And I think Tangaroa Harangi would have said the same thing. We punched the living daylights out of each other that night, and neither of us took a backward step. By the 10th and final round, I had a cut eye that would later need 12 stitches. My ears were ringing, my head was sore, my nose was bloodied and broken. Tangaroa had at least one broken rib. His elbows were swollen, and because I hadn't tried to kiss him again throughout the whole fight, I'd imagine he also had a broken heart. I couldn't have done any more than I did that night. I left everything I had in the ring, and I thought I'd done enough to win the fight. Unfortunately though for me, the 3 New Zealand judges, 2 of whom were Maoris, didn't see it the same way. But although I lost the fight, I still felt like a winner. Had I not stood up to Tangaroa at the weigh-in and planted one on his lips, I would have been massacred that night, I'm certain of it. But because I was able to remove the very thing that frightened me the most, my fear of losing, I was able to go on and give the best performance of my career. Think about that now. Are you the best you can be at whatever it is you do? Are you a champion? Or do you let your fear keep you locked up in an average life? Only when you can let go of the fear of losing and really start to believe in yourself will you enjoy the best that this life has to offer. Only then will you truly discover what you're capable of. Thank you.